Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Help Me Parent podcast. I'm your host, Kiley. And as always, I have with me Dr. Ellen. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, welcome
Howdy.
back. And today we have an awesome single parent episode. So we have some single parents here with us. We'll start with some introductions.
Hi, I'm Gina. I'm a single mom of two boys. They are 17 and 13.
Nice. Wait, he's just
sorry.
18. I was like,
His birthday is today.
Yes.
So 18 and 13.
Wow.
Yeah.
So fun. You got an adult.
I do. Yeah, on paper.
On paper.
I say 21.
I say 21. Or what is it, to where they can like rent a car? Is it like 25?
Yes.
See? There you go.
That's actually probably more accurate.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And then Billy?
Yes, I am Billy. And I'm a single dad. I have three boys, 17, not 18 yet. So 17, 13, and 7.
Yes.
So I've got the span there.
You got the span there.
I
So
do.
I'm excited. Thank y'all for being a part of this episode. We're just going to be talking about maybe some things y'all have gone through as being single parents and maybe some questions that single parents may have out there. We're hoping to get it all answered today, solve the world's problems today. No, not that close.
Yeah, let's not do that.
But one thing I have seen go around a lot on social media is like parenting guilt, mom guilt, dad guilt. And I think it can go through all parents, but also can come across a lot as a single parent. So how should somebody deal and handle with guilt as a parent? What advice would you give?
Well, I will agree. It's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
The mom guilt, dad guilt, parent guilt, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's always something to feel guilty about.
Yeah.
That we are doing too much. We're not doing enough. We did it the wrong way. We don't know the right way. If only this, or the whole woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Mm-hmm.
And it honestly is just not helpful. And I think, though, it's something that we have to be so conscious of and just catch ourselves in the moment.
Yeah.
And realize that there's always going to be the woulda, shoulda, couldas.
Mm-hmm.
And if only this hadn't happened, or if only I had done this. At the end of the day, for all of us, whether we're single parents or married or widowed parents, whatever the situation, we're not going to get everything right. It's just, we're human. And at the end of the day, our kids belong to God.
Yeah.
And they are His. And so we ask Him for His help. We trust that if He has asked us to be the parent of these kids, and He's done that on purpose, He doesn't do things by mistake. He doesn't do things as a cruel joke.
Yeah.
He does it on purpose. It's because we have something that these kids need, that our kids need. And when He gives us a job, He always helps us to do it. And so we just trust Him and say, okay, Lord, I messed that one up. Will you help me? He's so good to make up the difference. We ask Him ahead of time, Lord, just give me the words on how to handle this situation. Is there somebody I should ask? And we do what we can on the front end. But then at that point, once it's done, once it's said, we do what we can do to ask for forgiveness, to teach, to coach, to whatever it is. And then we just have to leave it with God. And that is a conscious choice, day by day, hour by hour, sometimes minute by minute. And we catch ourselves going back and looping that thing. We catch ourselves and just say, nope, not going there.
Yeah. Have y'all ever experienced that? Or if you have, how have you kind of conquered that? Because it's not of God. It is of the enemy to make you feel that way. So where have you kind of seen that in your life, and how have you kind of conquered that guilt?
I'd say for me, I noticed it. I've been a single mom since my oldest was 4. My youngest was just newborn. And I really had a lot of guilt at the beginning because it was not the way that I saw my life going or my family going. And it's so hard to see your kids hurting. And so, my 4-year-old would throw a fit or whatever, and I'd make an excuse. Oh, it's because he's hurting. What we've done as parents has done that to him. So now I feel so bad about it. Yeah. So I'll buy him something. Yeah. Or really when I should discipline, I don't because I'm feeling this guilt. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I realized what it was doing in him, which was not creating great, you're not getting the outcomes that you want. You're not helping the situation at all. So I had to ask the Lord to help me with it and learn to make those changes myself and deal with the issues we were having like I would with any other situation and move forward from there. But really it was just asking the Lord to help me and recognizing it and then doing something about it.
Yeah.
It's kind of strange maybe to say, but I actually had seasons of guilt that I would experience, but I often found myself working with my children on the guilt that they were feeling. And so having to navigate through that process with them. Dad, why did this happen? Is it my fault? Mm-hmm. Dad, what could I have done to contribute to this? Because it didn't turn out the way we wanted it either. Mm-hmm. And so I looked at the guilt from that angle a lot more than I have. I would kind of the personality where we're going to get it done, maybe every day.
You're just going to move on.
We're going to move on. The Lord's going to help us and we're going to move on. Mm-hmm. But the boys, that was really challenging. And especially for my youngest, it's so confusing, so hard. Mm-hmm. Their guilt is where I struggled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, even coming from my angle, my parents got a divorce when I was in high school. So I wasn't at that young age, but my sister had left and she was married, living 5 hours away. So I felt like an only child. Mm-hmm. So when that happened, I felt the guilt. I didn't think we'd be going here. I felt the guilt of like, okay, I was the only kid at home. What did I do? Like, could I have contributed this, making like my parents like, oh no, I'm the favorite, you're the favorite, Mm-hmm. So I think it comes down to that conversation you can have with each other and talking about it. Because I mean, as from a kid's perspective, I did feel that guilt, and it's definitely something that's not of the Lord.
Right.
But because
I will say just one thing on that. I think it's great to name it and have those conversations. I think that's so good that you had those conversations with your boys, that they felt the freedom to ask that, like, what did I do wrong? And you were able to speak into that, because if it's never spoken of, it gets bigger.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you can name it, if you can talk about it, and like from your perspective, Gina, to have somebody else, another adult who you can say, I feel so guilty, but not to try to do it alone, to conquer it alone. We don't want our kids to conquer it alone. And we don't need to try to conquer it alone, but to have people who can speak truth, who can give you perspective, I think is really important.
Another area that is kind of challenging with that is, for me at least, was owning my portion, but not opening something up that could be misconceived by the children to think that it was someone else's fault or it was their fault, because that was often the dialogue that would take place. Is, so it's not your fault, it's so-and-so's fault or mommy's fault, or and the reality of it was, it's not their fault. And I wanted the focus to be strictly on the fact that it's not their fault. And the Lord did not do this to us. That was the big thing.
Because it's easier to say, oh, they're not here, we can blame them. Oh, I can't see God, like I'm going to blame him for this happening. It's not true.
No, it's not.
So with that, having kind of like what you talked about, Ellen, having those people in your life that you can go and talk to, who are those people, and who are those people you can help find for your kids? Because maybe your kids might not want to completely open up to you. Should you force them to open up to you? Where should your team come into play? Who should it be?
Well, I think let's ask them who have been people you've been able to go to.
For me, it's been my church family. When I first, became a single mom, was going through a divorce, I did some counseling here, which helped me so much. I also went to a divorce care class, a couple times, a single parenting class, but just the people that I work with, my family. But even sometimes, your family's really close to you, and when there's those emotional things going on, Sometimes my mom would say, I'm probably not the best person to get advice from right now because I'm feeling it too. So you need to talk with someone outside and get a different perspective. And for me, it's always been people here at the church.
Yeah, I second that. I too share in the same thing. I went to personal counsel, and then divorce care was a huge asset to me getting through the process because I didn't know what to do. And I've actually been through the divorce phase twice. So my story's a little different. You know, the first time I didn't elect to get counsel, didn't elect to get into a godly group where I can get help by way of divorce care, biblical counsel. And so having that experience where I didn't do it, quote, the right way, the second time it's like, you know what, there is a better way and God can help. I don't have to do any of this on my own. So
yeah. And what about like for your kids? Like they went through it too, or even any issue or not, any problems that may come up for them, any questions they have. Do you feel like you were always a person that could help them, or were there people who you thought could speak into their lives in a different way?
Definitely. There are times that I'm able to help them and speak into their life for sure. But there are times that they need somebody else to talk to. And we've always come to church. We've always come to church here at the Ark. But so my kids consistently we're in Ark Kids every week. And, you know, they had small group leaders and teachers in their classrooms that loved them, that poured into them, that really just them individually, not even just the huge group. And that has made a huge difference. Relationships that they still have today that started in children's church. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, mine's a little different. My oldest son, being 17 and going through divorce the first time, was affected differently. And again, I didn't do it in the best of ways. I didn't handle it the best with regard to putting the Lord in the middle of it. And so his situation going through the divorce was far different the first time and the second time than my middle one or my youngest. So I've had the blessing, is what I would call it, of having the community that the kids get to come to church every week. You know, they have their friends in youth group, they have their friends in Art Kids. So it's been a blessing. But not only that, I've gotten counsel for them as well, which has truly been the opening up of their life to someone that's neutral, but biblically sound and able to pour into them the things that they need. It's not always easy because there's times they want to shut down, and we have to navigate that with the Lord's help too. But it's been different for each of the three.
Yeah. And I think this is a really good point for any parent, not just single parents, is to not parent alone.
Yeah.
That God created community for a reason. And he said that we would thrive in community, that we don't thrive alone.
Yeah.
And the statistics they're all there, and there's so many of them that point to the fact that kids need at least one other loving, caring adult in their life besides their parents in order for them to be who they were created to be, and especially in their faith formation.
Yeah.
That the presence of one other loving, caring adult in their life makes a huge difference. There's a lot of research that shows the ideal number is 5. If they have 5 people, and those can be, church is a great place to find those people. Sometimes teachers, sometimes coaches, sometimes a neighbor, sometimes a grandparent, an uncle, somebody who you trust. I think, you know, you said you wanted somebody who was going to counsel your kids with biblical soundness and all of that. So whatever you feel comfortable with as a parent, that you've got somebody else who is reiterating the same things that you're saying at home, that they're hearing it for somebody else is just more powerful. We saw that with our kids. We could say something 32 times, but they come home and say, well, coach said this. And it's like the greatest thing ever. And we're like, we have been saying this for 3 years. And now it's like it's like whatever. So I think for parents to not see those other voices as a threat, but to see them as, oh, my kids need that.
Yeah, that's good. This is a thought that came up because it's not a threat. You're working together. Do you go then as the parent and go ask them like, hey, what are y'all talking about? Or is it trust? Like, obviously you're the parent, that is your child, your responsibility. Do you go to that person who maybe is there, giving them some guidance in that area?
I would say typically no. I think you might go to that person initially if you see somebody who is in your child's life and you think they could be a voice for your child, but that relationship hasn't really started yet, that you could go to that person and say, hey, would you by chance have any time, any interest to be with my son, be with my daughter, and just be someone that they could talk to? You might go to them at that point, but really from that point on, I would say as long as they are a trusted adult, that you leave that with them and you just trust them. If there's something you need to know, that they will tell you. And I think you can ask your kids, like, how's it going? Did you have fun? And if they want to share, great. But if they don't, that's okay too. And from a counseling perspective, that's always what I tell parents is, okay, once they come, now it's between me and them. And what they share is going to stay with me and between us. If it's something I think you need to know, then the child and I will tell you together. And so that child just knows, okay, this is a trusted relationship.
Yeah, that's really good. So we're talking about how if your child is going through something, how they can get poured into, but just like on a clear like base, like how can you pour into your kids? How do you take the time to do it as a single parent? Maybe not having somebody else in the house to help around with stuff. How do you still take the intentional time to pour into yourself and into your kid?
Yeah, routine's been the big thing for us, and creating that routine that says we're gonna pray together. We may not sit down every single night and join hands, but we are definitely gonna have it, even if it's the Lord be with you as you go into the school. But nonetheless, I think that's been my thing all along is I want to create routine. I want to be open with the things that I do personally so that I can lead by example. Spending time in prayer, spending time in the Word is definitely something that we practice. And it starts with me is the way I've always looked at it. And if I can be that, then I can ask them to join me in that. And it's a lot easier process.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think I look for the moments that I can take, when certain things come up. Lots of times with my youngest, it'll be on the way to school. We'll be talking about something and there will be an opportunity to just speak into a situation, whatever I feel like it would be the Lord would be saying there. So I just kind of try to take the moments where I can get them. But one other thing you said, how we pour into ourselves too, which is definitely praying and reading my Bible, all of those things. But as a single mom, there's not always a lot of time that you get just for yourself. You're working full time, sometimes part time. You've got kids, you've got homework, you've got all of these things. Yeah. And so one little thing that I'll do, which is just kind of funny, I'll joke about it with my mom, but I get home from work and park in my driveway and I'll just stay in the car for like 15 minutes and look on my phone but like 15 minutes before I go in the house and like start all the things I have to do there. And I joke that that's my me time, I'm having my me time for the day. And that is just something that really helps me to go in like fresh and feeling like I had a little break and okay, now I'm ready to tackle all the things we have to do. So it's just a little thing I've learned.
I love that, finding your really 15 minutes wherever you can.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Kylie, I want to circle back because I think this is something that I hear a lot from single parents, and I can imagine it being a real challenge. And Billy, you referred to it briefly a while ago, but just the whole dynamic of how you talk about and refer to the other parent
Yes.
is such a big thing. And I can only imagine how difficult that is. And both of your situations are a little different, so I think it'd be good to speak to that. And maybe let's start with you, Billy, just with both moms. Are both moms still in the picture?
They are.
It's still in their
Yes.
lives?
Yeah,
Right.
50% of the time for both. So they're equal for both.
Okay. So you've got the situation of 50-50 custody, 50-50 time. How have you navigated?
Yeah, I will tell you first and foremost, it has not been easy for any of us, moms included. But my specific way of navigating has always been to keep mom as mom, and mom will never change. We love mom irregardless of anything, good, bad, or indifferent, and we always speak highly of mom. And I also let the boys know that we all make mistakes. So not one of us is to blame for any one thing. It's a challenge because there's days that you get frustrated with the other, which once was your spouse. So you have to keep yourself in a mindset, at least for myself, I have to keep myself in a mindset that says, we're not going to blame anyone. We're going to own what we own, and we're going to love, and we're going to be very kind towards our mothers, and our boys have. You're not going to get bad mouthed. It's just not going to happen at daddy's house. We're going to love mama because she's your mama, and daddy's going to love her too because she's your mama. Right. And so we've always been kind, and sometimes we make choices that aren't always good, and we get frustrated at them, but we never say bad things about mama. That's just a rule.
Which I think is so wise. I think that can be especially challenging when that's the rule in your house, but maybe it's not the rule in mom's house.
True. And
because sometimes the other parent is willing to bash dad or whomever.
And you said it in a podcast with a nuclear family reference. I heard about the division component, and that's been my goal is I don't want division in my home, mom's home. And if I can keep that from happening by way of talking good about mom, then we're going to do it, So I don't want to give the children an opportunity to see there being a weakness in that particular area.
But the truth is you only have control of your home.
That's right.
And what happens in the other home, the other 50% of the time, you just have to come to grips with the fact that you have no control there and leave that. It's like, okay, Lord, that's between you and them and them and the child. And so I just got to trust you with it. Which I can imagine being very challenging. You're in a different situation.
Yes.
So how has that been for you in how to talk about dad?
It was definitely one thing I learned, I think, from the class that I went to from divorce care, where they talked about when you talk negatively about the child's, in my case, the child's dad, that the child can make the connection that I'm part mom and I'm part dad. And if you're saying bad things about dad, then you're saying bad things about me. And so I just never wanted to do that. So it is very hard when you're frustrated and you see your kids hurt or whatever. And the other thing is too, I never would lie. I'm not making up big stories. I'm not, if dad didn't come for a visit, I'm not making some elaborate thing. I will say, I'm so sorry that you're sad. Dad couldn't come this time or whatever it is. So I'm truthful. But I'm also not going to talk bad about him. And I'm not going to let them talk bad about him either, because the Bible says, honor your father and mother. And so I want them to do that even when it's really hard for me.
Right.
So,
Or maybe when they're not being honorable.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say honor them when they deserve it,
Yeah.
or when they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
It just says to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that speaks huge to both of your hearts. But I think that's so important to have that balance of, no, we're not going to bash the other parent. We're not going to be unkind. But there are times that it's appropriate and right to be honest.
Yes.
And in your situation, dad's not in their life.
Right.
By his choice.
Right.
And to let your boys know, if they're like, why won't you let us see dad? To say, you know what? I'm not keeping you from, if your dad wants to see you, you have an opportunity to see your dad, I will make it happen. I am not keeping you from him. But the truth is, I don't know where he is. Or, whatever it is. So that honesty, and, even with you to say, why did you get divorced, or whatever. And we be honest to the point that is age appropriate.
Right.
Correct.
And all of that. But I do think it's important to answer their questions and to be honest to the degree that is appropriate.
Yeah. Because they are still in their lives to some degree. And if you're having those conversations and like a conflict arises with them, how do you navigate that? When how do you two handle it and leave the kids out of the picture? So I feel like oftentimes kids can get thrown in the middle no matter the age, no matter what happens, and it's not fair to anybody. So how do you handle that in an appropriate way?
Yeah. So I first take time, pray about it. I learned that the hard way. But that's usually my first approach, is like, I have to step back. I have to ask the Lord for his help, because I don't always know what's going on or how to fix any of those situations. But I always make it a point to connect with mom on a verbal level. If we can do it in face-to-face, which thank the Lord we're able to communicate face-to-face, we'll do that. But we'll at the very least have phone conversations about whatever that subject may be and come to a common ground. Even if it's a compromise by one or the other, we still, thank the Lord, have the ability to co-parent in such a way that it's all for the common good of the kids. And we want to put the Lord in it. And that's been the way we typically will address those things. Early on, I will say, we didn't have that great line of communication. So we would do things by text message, which that became a failure because text messages can be misunderstood.
Yes.
So again, everything takes time in this case, because you're trying to build a relationship as a co-parent and no longer have relationship as a spouse. And so it does take time, and it does get better with the Lord's help, for sure.
I think that's good. I also think you're in a unique situation that people could benefit from with. You're not just co-parenting with one, you're co-parenting with two.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that both of those aren't the same.
They're not. And they're not for a few reasons. But they're still the same with regard to moms love the babies so much, just as I do. So that common ground alone helps us navigate a lot of things, everything, quite frankly, because they still know that it's not about mom and dad are not conflicting so much. It's now we're focused on the babies. We're focused on the boys. So, but it's two different people.
Right.
And it's two different calendars, and it's two different.
Right.
So
that's what I'm thinking.
There's a large
it's
dynamic
like what are some ways just practically, like the calendar or whatever, or that is it your oldest or your oldest two?
My oldest two.
Oldest two.
And my youngest.
Is their mom, and then the youngest is a different mom.
Yeah.
And this may not have arisen just because your youngest is 7, but if one situation is different than the other situation for the boys, how you navigate that.
Yeah.
Like time with mom, or what's done when they're with their mom, what's done when they're with you, when that's different.
Yeah. I didn't expect this question. But so my older two boys' mother and I obviously have a lot longer history to be divorced. So our relationship is further along from a stable co-parenting relationship, I could say. So we work with each other really well. Schedule conflicts were very easy. Pick up the phone, text one another. Hey, do you mind if this, or do you mind if that? Can you help with this? Can you help? And my youngest is on a different schedule than my older two. So we have a little bit of an overlap with schedules. It's still 50-50, but there's a different balance in the schedule. Yeah. So what we've done on my younger son's mother's schedule is she's now coming into the picture with love and understanding and those sorts of things, which has helped us to all be able to collaborate a schedule. And again, my most recent ex-wife was around this schedule for my older two boys for almost a decade.
Yes.
So we had a really good understanding then, which is a blessing.
Yes.
So to answer your question, when we get into situations like that, how do we manage it? We're just open and communicate. That's really the big thing. Is advance notices, open line of communication, and understand that it's all for the common good of the boys. Yeah. It's not my will over her will or vice versa. Yeah. And that's really been it. And another thing I'll say is you have to come to a place where you don't have a prideful approach or a feeling like someone is out to get me. And I think that's been a huge blessing for us, is we don't look at each other as the enemy anymore. We look at each other as we're on the same team.
Yes. Our just schedule wise, and this is just, I can imagine people might be interested. Do you, when they're the 50% with their mom, do you have times that all three of them are gone? And that you are alone? And did you do that intentionally, or do you flip-flop it?
So we do. I have times whenever it's just me without the boys, and then I have times whenever it's kind of a rotational thing. So then I have times when the boys are with mom, my older boys are with mom, and my younger one is with me. So just to make it real simple, I have my older boys 7 days in a row consecutive. My younger one would be first, third, fifth with an extended time in between there. So if that kind of paints the picture a little bit. So there's overlap.
Right.
And then there's sometimes whenever there is no overlap.
Right.
So, but then there's often times where we can rotate schedules because mom and I communicate, and we get that to work out to where we all be together.
Yeah. That's good. Can we just, I'm interested here too, from Gina's perspective, with not having somebody to share at 50%, how you've navigated that, and just that dynamic
of just kind of being on my own.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is hard.
Yeah.
I rely on my family quite a bit. But I, for a long time, was like, well, I am not going to be a burden to anybody. And this is where we are. And so I'm just going to pick us up, and we're going to get back on our feet, and we're going to do it. And I'm going to just do it all on my own. We lived with family for a little bit after everything happened. And then I got an apartment, and we've been on our own ever since. But it took me a little bit learning too. I do need to ask for help.
Yes.
It is okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
And I need help.
Yeah.
I need help from the Lord, but I need help from other people too. Sometimes just, as a single mom, when you ask for somebody to keep your kids, it's often because I need to work, or I need to go to a class, or I've got something I've got to go do. It's not something I'm doing for myself.
Right.
So I use the times I need to ask somebody for those times. And then I feel bad to ask for more than that. Like, oh, I'd like to have a night out, but I'm not going to ask for that because that's just selfish. But you can ask for those things too. Yeah. And you need those things too. So I don't even know if I'm answering the question anymore, but basically, it is okay to ask for help, and you don't have to do it all on your own. Find your family.
Yeah.
Also, one thing I'll say is my in-laws, who I had a great relationship with beforehand, they have been fabulous, and they loved us all the way through it. Still have relationship with my kids today, and I do as well. I would say, don't cut those things off, if you have the opportunity, because it's important for your own kids.
Yes.
But that's been a huge part of help to me too. So
Yeah, that's really good.
Have you ever had to manage, kind of like how we talked about the mom not talking bad about dad or dad versus mom, with that relationship with your in-laws? Have you ever had to deal with some of those conversations, like, hey, like, I know y'all are their father's parents, like, but have you ever had to have those tough conversations?
not at all, because my father-in-law has passed away now, but my mother-in-law is just, she is so good. When we all get together, it's just all about the boys and all about the family, and we don't talk about everything going on with everything else. So we just leave all of that alone, and we focus on our little family and our time, and that's that. So I haven't had any conflict there, because she just, I think, decided not to go there.
Yeah. And that's amazing for the
that is
boys,
good.
because it's about them. And also, y'all both have boys, so they have siblings. And especially like in your scenario, they're not always with each other, whereas your boys are. How have you seen like their relationships impacted or grow? How do they kind of like, we're brothers? Like, how has that kind of worked?
Yeah, it's well, I have the spectrum, right? The 17 to the 7. So it's different for each, but they have all gathered together, and I think in a lot of ways it's unified them in a way that it's bonded them together, that they're inseparable. And there's times where, of course, the younger wants to, the typical banter from a younger to an older. The sibling rivalries are all still there. My time with daddy, give me your, that type of thing. So, but as a whole, it's definitely unified them.
Yeah, that's good. What about your boys who
Yeah.
live together, see each other 24/7?
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah, when they were little, they were definitely best friends, and they've got a 4-year span. So my youngest really looks up to my oldest. We're in an interesting season right now where we're hitting the rivalry and the all of that fun stuff. But I definitely would say, hopefully we'll get back to the best friend thing. But
Which that tends to happen.
Yeah.
As they get older.
Go through it
And
sometimes.
appreciate.
And they do connect on other things, just the two of them. They'll have a joke together. They won't even tell me. But yeah.
That's fun. Yeah. Is there any advice you would give to parents who have kids who, whether they're singled from their spouse passing away or something, how could like use their sibling to kind of like bond? Because like a sibling bond is so awesome. You have siblings, you have 2 kids, so they're siblings. How would you kind of help positively influence that?
I think, again, regardless if it's a single parent home or a 2-parent home, that teaching your kids from early on, or from whatever point you are, but teaching them that they will always have each other. That there will be a time that they probably won't have you. But kind of the whole thing, blood's thicker than water, that you are family, you are for each other, you are there for each other, you protect each other, that just instilling that, and sometimes it's just speaking it and you don't see it. But we told our kids growing up, it's like, y'all are best friends. We don't treat best friends like that. You're best friends now, you're going to be best friends. And there are seasons that it seems like they are, and seasons that it seems like they're not. But I will say, even as an adult, I'm the oldest of 3. I have 2 younger brothers. But my middle brother and I were in college at the same time. And that's when we really just bonded. Wow. And it's like, okay, we really are there for each other. And so even when you don't see it right now, later, they'll know it. Yeah. But I think it is good to not just assume it will happen, but to speak it and to encourage it, find time for them to be together. We, with our kids, they're both married now, and we're like, y'all go out, just y'all, and we'll keep the grandbaby. We'll sacrifice. We'll sacrifice grandbaby so y'all can go out. So good of us. But to still encourage that relationship and even equip it when you can.
Yeah, that's really good. Just one last question. How would you encourage or how yourself, how have you found strong relationships, and how can you show your kids strong relationships as maybe they've seen some broken relationships? How can you say, hey, there are some relationships that are so good, and how can you encourage them to find them? How have you found them? We talked about it in church, but what do you need to look for in a strong relationship? Sorry, that was unplanned. That was not on our list.
I think y'all can obviously both speak to this, but I think this kind of goes back to the honesty with our kids, is saying, life doesn't always go as planned. Yeah. But people are people, and people can make choices. The only person we have control over is us. And so we are responsible for ourselves and only ourselves. And then as we develop relationships with each other, that we're wise and in who we're developing relationships with, and we can all speak from experience on, how to wisely choose friends, how to wisely choose a spouse. And when you get into dating relationships, we can all speak. We've all broken up with somebody, at some point, and helping them to navigate that. I think you can do it in an honest way without throwing anybody under the bus. But to say, here's what I thought when I got married, but it didn't work out that way because we both made choices. And so here are some things to look for. Here are some things to be aware of. And you use the healthy relationships and what you've learned about broken relationships, and how some relationships you have no control over, that you can't restore them, and some you can. And so just being honest and talking it through, I would say.
Yeah, that's good. Do you have any?
I completely agree. And I think one of the things for me, I'm in that phase now where especially with my older two, I'm showing them areas that I could have done different. Yeah. And I'm letting them know that where my choice came from, why, when, where, why, and how, so to speak, so that they can understand for themselves. Because my oldest is, he's at the age where he's dating and wanting to pick relationships and those sorts of things. So bringing it back to the biblical side of things too has been so big for me, because I, for a while in my life, never did have the biblical context for relationships. And so to implement it and to live it out, and then to show them where I failed in certain ones, not so much on the mom or the relationship with regard to the marriage, but relationships as a whole, and just demonstrating it, talking it through as I'm demonstrating it too. That's a big thing that I've tried to do recently, is I had this situation happen, and I'm going to make this decision because I feel the Lord prompting me in this area or that area, and just being as candid as I can.
Yeah, that's great. So y'all both mentioned divorce care, which is a class that we offer here, and I bet different churches offer it. But let's talk about it. What is it? How did it help you? And talk about it. Divorce care.
I'll take it. Yeah, I'll take that. So divorce care is basically a class that's offered for people that are either single divorced or even widowed or widowers. They're going through a loss of relationship, essentially. It's a place for them to go. It's a community of people. It's biblical based training and teaching to get you from that position of pain, loss, and suffering to a healing whole position to where you can now walk from that situation, that tragedy, so to speak, and live a life that's truly healed and whole. The people in the group, it's a hard place to go at first for the people that do choose to go. But when they make that choice and when they get out of the vehicle, walk in the door, come into the classroom, it's such a place of healing. It's such a place of openness and transparency. And believe it or not, people will actually see benefits just knowing that someone else is going through a tougher situation than they are. It's just a wonderful community.
Yes, and there's also divorce care for kids as well, if I'm not wrong.
Great point. Yes, yes. That's offered, I believe, the ages 6 to 12. I don't recall exactly the age on that, but it is. And it overlaps. So mom and dad are going to divorce care for adults, and they're getting the same material on obviously an age appropriate level that the children are getting. Yeah, it's a great place.
Yeah. So if you're anybody in the Conroe area, the Ark Church offers divorce care for kids, and a single parenting class. And you can find info on all of that at thearkchurch.com or ark.info.
There you go.
Correct?
You could do announcements.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
I'll just add to what Billy was saying about it can be a hard thing to go to the first time, which is so true. You don't want to have to admit that you need to be there, but when you go, I remember just going the first couple times. What encouraged me the most was the teacher that was teaching the class had been through a divorce, had talked about how hard it was for her, but she was healed and she was happy again. And in that time, I was so broken, I could not even imagine being healed and happy again. So just to see that gave me such hope and helped me so much. So I would absolutely encourage it.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You've taught it before.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. It's great. And the people that are in the class, to Gina's point, the people in the class just bind themselves together in such a network. It's truly lifelong relationships that are established there.
That's good. And when is it offered?
So Tuesday nights from 6 to 8 here at the church. We have it on campus. So every Tuesday night.
Yep, it's sign up for free, as Ellen said, on the arkchurch.com or on ark.info. Thank you guys for being a part of this episode. It's a great episode. And thank you guys for tuning in. Just remember that you can parent and we can help.